are starting our meeting today. I'm calling this meeting to order. My name is Susan Ambrose. I'm the chair of the Coastal Advisory Committee. We are happy that those of you who are here attending are here. At any rate, can we have, let's have a call to order. We are all fine. Everybody's good. A pledge of allegiance. Dale, would you please give us the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right. On to roll call.
Committee Member Ayer.
He is on his way.
Okay. Committee Member Dolegowski.
Present.
Committee Member Dow.
Here.
Committee Member Schmidt.
Here.
Committee Member Van Noort.
He is absent tonight.
Okay. Vice Chair Jacobs. And Chair Ambrose.
Here. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, let's look at the minutes. Does anybody have any comments about the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is 4 of us. Thank you very much, with 3 absent. Alrighty, next 2 special presentations. San Clemente Pier Bacteria Source Characterization Study. And who is putting that on for us? It is Nikki Beach.
Yes, good afternoon, committee members. Is this on?
No, I don't think that's on.
Is it on now? Is it
Don't we have a green one here?
test?
That's ours.
Is it on? It just doesn't sound like it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound too amplified.
Is there something I have to press on my end?
That sounded like there was something.
That was me.
Oh.
Is there another mic over there?
Yeah,
She
you
can
want
sit-
to,
yeah,
you can
could
sit
you
there
sit
or
over
there
there?
if you want.
Okay.
Sound pretty clear.
Do you want to sit here?
Sure.
Well,
Looks
then
like
you
that
should be
mic is
looking
on.
backwards though.
Are they both on?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Okay. Ted.
There we go. Thank you very much for your flexibility.
Because I sometimes have a hard time hearing you. I left my hearing aids at home.
Yeah. I'm not very good at adjusting the height of the mic too. So anyway, good afternoon, committee members. This is a very special presentation that we have here tonight. It's on a study that is about, well, probably close to 6 years in the making to this point in time. But it was originally meant to be presented to a stakeholder advisory committee that was formed by the city council back then, but that stakeholder advisory committee has sort of turned over a little bit, and we thought it would be a good idea to have this presentation before the coastal advisory committee because it does involve coastal water quality issues and also provides a public forum in which the stakeholders may be able to attend or listen to the recording later. So without further ado, I want to introduce the city's longtime consultant for this project. This is the San Clemente Pier Bacteria Source Characterization Study. And from WSP, I have Ted Von Bittner, and he's going to go ahead and take it away from here with some insight from me as city staff, Nikki Beach, Environmental Programs Analyst, of course. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you, Nikki. Good afternoon, Chair Ambrose, committee members. This has been a long-term study. It started back in 2018, really, and it finally came to fruition in the last few years. It's been a long tenure of investigation, adaptation, and reinvestigation over and over again to get to the end point. So today's presentation really is an overview of the overall project. There's a much more detailed report been posted online to be able for you all to read. This is more as the high points of the study, kind of just some key issues that were identified and observed in our findings from the project. All right, so today we're going to kind of cover 4 areas. First is our motivations, or why we started this study, how we developed our approach with our design, what we discovered during the course of the study, and obviously what we learned. So today's goals really are just to re-familiarize you with the study, its purpose and its goals, provide an overview level presentation about the very complex water quality study, help you gain understanding about why this was important and how to set a precedent for the future. And then really it's to drive home that message about the city's water quality program has a lot of value to the public at large. All right, so just give you the kind of punchline first. Did the study result in measurable improvements? The answer is yes. We saw significantly reduced bacteria levels in the surf zone, which resulted in positive benefits for the city in terms of public perception, public health postings, and also regulatory outcomes. And it really is a good case example for the Clean Ocean Program, how money invested in a project like this can be beneficial to a much larger audience. All right, so just going to reiterate, why did we start this study? Around 2018, we had 3 big drivers that were pushing us to do this study. One is the 2018-2019 Gila Bay Beach Report Card, kind of a public health issue. There was a public health regulations problem. There was also the Orange County Health Agency's 2017-18 annual report card, which shows that the secondary beaches had a problem beginning to appear. And then also we had this directive from the state saying we had to meet a certain schedule with certain bacteria levels by a certain date, otherwise there could be consequences to the city, primarily in forms of enforcement actions that could also lead to monetary fines. All right, so in 2018-19, the nonprofit group Gila Bay published their annual beach report card. And in that year, the St. Clair Pier landed number 1 on that list. That is worse than the state. It is the worst beach in the state that year. So that kind of drove a lot of concern. A lot of businesses say, hey, this is going to impact our tourism. It's going to affect our beachgoers. This is really bad for the city. Do something about the city. So I met with the lady at the time who's Nikki's predecessor. We talked about this setting. It's okay, let's do something for this. Around the same time, there is an ongoing weekly monitoring program by Orange County Health Agency. They sampled their surf zone.
Yes.
They sampled around the pier, and you can see that trend plot on top. Around 2015-16, it began to take an upward spike. And that really came about as a result of changes to the monitoring program that were instituted by the state of California in 2015. They changed how we monitored, and it picked up this hotspot at St. Clair Pier and said, oh my God. And so you see that rise climbed up. And if you look at that list below, what you see is all these different beach segments, posting the days, and then BMD was Beach Mile Day. The pier is the one driving all of the issues. It's 18 of the 19 days. So it really is, it was the hotspot, the problem beach at the time. On top of that, we also had this looming clock over our heads, which is the state's revised total maximum daily load directive for indicated bacteria. The Twain Beaches increased TMDL effectively. That said, by April 4th, 2021, under dry weather conditions, you must meet these numeric targets, and those are shown in the table below. So it gives you a numeric value with an allowable exceedance frequency that has to occur by April 4th, 2021. Right? If you don't meet that timeline, you're subject to enforcement actions by the state and or third-party lawsuits by environmental nonprofits. Right? So that was really the 3 big motivators for why we did this study. Right, so if you're going to go back and look at this, we really started this in 2019 with the formation of the SAC. We got together and said, here's our issues, here's our approach, our design, what we plan to do, and then how we're going to actually use the data to drive the process to identify the corrective actions that are going to get this beach off this list and help comply with regulations. And so we went through a series of SAC meetings, investigations, all the way up through February 2023. So really, it's 4 years intensive work we went through. And that included a lot of work by the city itself to do additional work in the background that wasn't really seen as part of this project, but was critical to the overall execution. All right, so just quick technical approach refresher for you all. For those of you not familiar with bacteria and how they're actually used, we incorporated 2 types of bacteria in the study. One is the more traditional culture-based, it's a petri dish-based bacteria. Typically takes around 18 to 24 hours to create results. It has a direct relationship, it does not have direct relation to pathogens. You can find bacteria in the environment and there's no underlying pathogens. What I mean are the viruses, the protozoas, the things that really make you sick. And so those two can be uncoupled in the environment. It's also standard method. This is what people have typically used. And so just for context, when the US EPA developed these standards, they developed the numeric values for the water quality objectives in areas where they had sewers overflowing into the water body, the Great Lakes basically. They had combined sewer systems that would overtop and then dump into the lake, and they said, okay, that's how we're going to create our standards. Well, we know from a lot of studies in California that those standards don't exactly correlate very well one-to-one. So we kind of say there's really no direct relationship. If you find bacteria that appear, it doesn't mean that there's pathogens there as well. We also include kind of a state-of-the-art molecular DNA-based marker. It's just an essential piece of DNA that gets picked up in the environment. You take it back to a machine that copies it and replicates it several thousands of times, and based on the strength of that signal, how many copies you have, it tells you how much DNA, and that DNA is also source-specific. So the DNA marker from human only comes from human. That from dog only comes from dog, or DNA from bird comes from bird. So it's source specific, and that helps with source tracking efforts as well. And those are typically 2 to 4 hours to get the results. So 2 to 4 versus 1 day. Obviously, it has a lot of utility in this kind of design where you want to identify your source, take a sample, and then check it to see if you're right or wrong, and then come back and do it later.
Ted, would you say that source tracking or molecular genetic markers are actually the only con really is that they're maybe more expensive?
Yes, they're a lot more expensive.
Okay.
But it's a much more concise result than bacteria.
And what is the name of that test?
They're called molecular genetic markers,
Okay.
or just DNA marker genetic
Microbial
markers.
source. Yeah, microbial source tracking is another common term.
Correct.
So it's
They,
just like a library of known genetic markers that then you're going to get into the data set of the water that is multiplied by.
Yes, more or less, yes.
Ted, one more question.
Yes.
Now, did this include the stakeholders that we put in for the Coastal Advisory Committee?
I'm sorry?
Did your study also take advantage of the people who were on the stakeholders council at that time? They came from different counties, and
Yeah.
you had a great relationship with them where you'd bring back the results, and they would all gather together, and I recall those days all very well, and I think you interacted very well with them.
Correct. We had a member of our committee, Rita Aguilar. She was with Orange County Public Works at the time.
Yes.
She was part of what's called the Comprehensive Human Waste Source Reduction Strategy Program.
Yes.
And they were the ones that really we worked with closely to dovetail our source investigation into how they were doing their work. They had a lot of other star raters that said, we don't need yours too on top of our plate. You guys go ahead and do it. Kind of follow this recipe, and then our results will be consistent. So whatever you guys use will satisfy our needs as well.
Yes, well, we were very careful picking people from different counties because they had skill sets that they could bring to the table.
Correct, and we had Amber Baylor at the time. She also provided different perspective.
the stakeholders came from Orange County Public Works, which was the Choosers program that we're familiar with because we talked about it here with respect to the work that was done at Poche as well, that program.
Yes.
And then we had the South Orange County Wastewater Authority, which is Amber, and a representative from the local Surfrider Foundation chapter, a representative from the Friends of St. Clemente Foundation, a representative from this Coastal Advisory Committee in its former iteration, and a member of the public.
Yes.
And I think that was it as for like the actual stakeholders that participated. There were a few other invitees, but no one else that could regularly make the meetings. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so today I'm talking about bacteria, just to give you a reference point. When you say bacteria are high or low, or they exceed something, what I'm referring to are these 6 criteria. So the state of California has standardized water quality objective, WQOs. There's some for a single sample, and then there's some that you use for multiple samples to create an average. So there's single sample maximum, that's on the left, or the geometric mean, which is on the right. So that's, the single sample maximum is just one sample against the standard. A geometric mean is 5 samples against the standard. It's the average of 5 results. So today you're going to see both numbers thrown around a bit. I tend to lean more towards the geometric mean. It's what people consider to be more health protective. Okay, just to sort of go back to the details, why the pier? What was so special about the pier that it became our focus? So as part of this project, we went back and we summarized all the data for the prior year. And what you can see is that there are 3 beach segments listed here. There's the headquarter, which is called S19, there's the pier, and then there's T Street. And what you can see is that at all 3 sites, the numbers are not even. What really stands out is that the pier has a lot of exceedances of the geometric mean. About 7 out of 10 samples exceeds for NRO, and 6 out of 10 for fecal coliform. That's a lot. That's a really high number. Considering state considers allowable to be 0, right? We're quite a bit over that. So that means you have to reduce that number from that 70% down to 0 in roughly 2 years. Right, that's the deadline, is 2 years to get to 0. And when you look at the pier itself, there are 3 stations around the pier. There's an up coast station, which is on the left, there's a point 0 in the middle, and there's a down coast. The up coast, down coast are around 75 feet either direction. And what you guys can see also is that the point 0 location exceeds by far more than the other 2. So really, the whole problem with the pier was being driven by the point 0 location. And that's the one they picked up in 2015 when they changed the program. And just to remind you what the point 0 looks like, the picture on the left is what point 0 looks like. Basically, you'd be swimming underneath the pier in the pylons, which, Nikki, you want to add something here?
Well, the city does not allow swimming underneath the pier, so it's interesting because there were good reasons for not allowing swimming under or within, is it 100 feet of the pier?
Yes.
But also interesting that you would monitor for recreational water quality in an area where swimming is not allowed. But
So another sort of level of difficulty of the whole project. I'm sorry?
But then we had all those pigeons.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. They were actually part of the problem.
spoiler alert.
Okay. So as part of this project, what we developed with the SAC is a conceptual model. And the idea is we put together everything we knew about the watershed, the beach, the site, and we said, let's be objective, let's consider all possibilities here. And let's go out and let's test this model. Let's take samples from each one, observations at each point, and let's figure out what's really driving the problem. So we said there are watershed flows from things like landscape overwatering, car washing. It's moving bacteria down the watershed to the storm drain system. The water gets in the pipe. Birds are attracted to it. It's a source of water for them. Obviously, the water coming out of the pipe is going to have bacteria and stuff that can get in the sand.
Yeah.
We know that there's a water source, there's sand, and there's roosting space under the pier. So obviously, they're just going to stay there and live there. We also know there's pipes underneath the pier that could be leaking as well. Hopefully not leaking so often they cause all the exceedances. And then we know that the surf zone is just a mixing pot. It's going to turn up whatever's there and it's going to create a spike of bacteria that gets sampled later by the county. All right, so the way we did this is kind of a 3-step process. But first we said, let's go walk the watershed, survey the watershed. Let's find out what's out there, figure out what occurs most often, has the most geographic widespread occurrence, kind of most prevalent source. And then based on the ranking of all that results, we're going to sample the ones that show up most often, and then we're going to use that data, the visual observations, the water quality results, to drive the source of basic priorities. So whatever's the highest on the list is going to get knocked off first through the abatement process. And so here's an example we actually saw during the studies, pigeons in the stand, inside the pipe, getting water. So in terms of the source abatement process, we said is not all sources are equal. When it comes to human health risk, of course, humans are by far the worst problem for ourselves. Our bacteria cause us to get sick first. Birds were considered second. Obviously, when you have a lot of birds, you can get bacteria levels high enough that you actually can become ill. And then dogs, we think we're the third. We don't see a lot of dogs. They're not allowed on the beach. So our priorities were, let's target the things that can make people sick first and then just go down that list. Obviously, if the human's not there, then we'll target the birds next. All right, so now let's actually get into the results. So the first thing we did as part of the study is we just walked the 2 sub-watersheds, the yellow and the purple. And we just spent days, all hours a day, morning, noon, night, middle of the night, early morning hours, you name it, over and over and over again, walking the entire watershed, recording everything we see, wherever we see it. We looked for human waste, people that were homeless, that were maybe doing things they shouldn't, pet waste, that people are irresponsible for pets, flowing water, where does the flowing water come from? Is there pigeons? Are there, droppings left behind? And are there leaking pipes that can be targeted as well? So there's a watershed segment and there's a beach segment. So the results you can see now is sort of takes all those observations, compiles them, and then sorts them most often to least often. So in the watershed itself, we saw, of course, driver flows was by far the biggest thing. Most of the time we saw the flows coming out of these little holes in the drain, we call them a curb drain. That's usually at the backyard drain or some sort of groundwater relief. Overwatering is people just overwatering the yards. Groundwater seeps, that is just a crack in the street with water pouring up out of it. No idea where it comes from, but it's obviously it's there, so let's sample it. We also saw some areas where there was ponded water sitting in the gutter. It hasn't rained a couple days, but there's a pool of water sitting there for who knows how long. So we also targeted that as well. And then there's a small time that we saw people washing down their sidewalks and their driveways. We also saw a bit of what we call excrement, just pet waste. People leaving their dog droppings behind. And of course rabbits too, which are native to the park. Trash and debris. Most times we saw just dry trash in the gutter. And then of course, in terms of wastewater sources, we actually saw a number of times that these solid waste trucks were actually dripping liquids onto the street. And in terms of the beach, of course, it's the pigeons. By far, more than anything else, the pigeons outnumbered everybody. Almost 10 to 1.
Yeah.
So it kind of tells you, we're going to target driver flows and we're going to target the pigeons to figure out what's there. And of course, we're not going to leave anything off the table. We're going to also investigate other ones, but in terms of ranking, those are our 2 highest priorities. So we went out and we sampled all those sources we saw on that previous slide. So what you see here is what's called a box and whisker plot. It's just a way to visualize the data. It gives you everything from the lowest value, gives you the average, and gives you the highest value. It puts in a nice little symbol, and then that little diamond is the arithmetic mean of all the values. And the solid line in the middle is the median. So what you can see is that it gives you all the data, and then just by the natural assemblage of the data, you can see which ones are the highest, which ones are the lowest. So on this chart, pigeon excrement was by far the highest source of bacteria, or the highest concentrations of bacteria. So we found bacteria in the sand. We just took a sample of it and had the lab analyze it. You also can see that the landscape overwatering had some elevated levels of bacteria, and that the storm drains themselves were also elevated as well, which makes sense. If it's coming from the watershed, it's going to be in the drain as well. The things that we didn't see very often have high level bacteria, the curb drains. Really, there was nothing there. They were just leaking out water. Most of the time, it's just groundwater. The same as the floor drain we found in the pier, underneath the pier as well. So that kind of sets our precedent for what we're going to target for sampling.
Did you also evaluate leaking sewer pipes, which would ultimately, be a source of contaminated groundwater to some of these other?
We did it during the source abatement study. We knew that bacterial levels in sewers is going to be high. We don't need to resample just to prove what we already know. Our question really is, are the sewers at elevation that makes them a concern? What I mean is, are the sewers at higher elevation than the storm drain system? So if you have a sewer that's cracked and leaky and it sits above the drain, it can leak down gravity, downhill in the storm drain system. We actually did all that math to figure out if there are spots where the sewers are higher than the storm drain system. And if you remember, the pier bowl is, it's a hill, it's an elevated bowl. And so there are spots where the sewer is actually higher than the storm drain system. Mm-hmm. There's not much of a drain pipe in the pier bowl. It's really small. Basically, it's the bottom of the watershed. There's a few small segments of pipe that drain to the beach, and that's it. Mm-hmm. The city's part of this project did inspect all the sewer pipes in the pier bowl as well. And I'll show you a figure later from me that it shows you everywhere they inspected and then everywhere they found an issue.
And that was a separate investigation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
As part of the study, we also sampled the sand as well. And there were 3 sets of sand that were collected. There was high tide above sort of the mean high watermark, up around the storm drain systems underneath the pier. In that sort of intertidal zone we call the low tide samples. And then we did some far out from the pier above the high, so above the high watermark. So try to capture what you think is going to be the most contaminated areas of sand. So the red dots on the left shows you the sand under the pier above the high watermark. Quite elevated, right? Just for context, back to your point about sewer systems, sewers typically run in that 10 to 100 million CFU range. So it looks like sewage, right? It's not, so I'm not saying it's sewage, but it has levels that are very, very high, which should kind of draw a concern. We also took samples of sand that had a visible droplet of pigeon excrement on it. We actually waited for them to do the business, scooped it up, put it in a bottle, and sent it to the lab. That's that gray line across the top. So the sand that has the highest concentrations looks like sand with pigeon excrement in it. And then of course where the tide comes in and out, or the waves come in and out, it's much lower, right? So your mind should think, okay, you're not finding sand in the intertidal, you find high levels above the high tide line. So maybe the tide and the waves are picking up the sand with bacteria on it, suspend it into the surf zone, and that's what gets sampled. So I actually have a slide kind of reinforce that, why the sand is a source, but in my mind I see is high levels of bacteria in the sand above where the waves can reach, and then where they can reach, it's low. It's probably resuspending the bacteria, is washing away back in the surface. All right, any questions so far on that? Any of those slides? Okay. As part of that, we also did genetic markers too. We did 3, human, bird, and dog. And so what you can see is just the different areas where we took samples, and at the bottom is total detections. What that means is any sample that had a measurable quantity of genetic marker in it versus the number of samples collected. So 20% of the samples collected for human were positive, 20% for bird, 17% for dog. So again, it reinforces the message of human is the most prevalent source of bacteria in a lot of different areas, so that should be our priority for source abatement. So as part of this study, in line with the Chooser program, we actually did a very focused, intensive effort to just target out the human sources. And what I mean by human sources is sources that are going to have a genetic marker in it. For example, sewage can have, well, we know sewage has genetic markers in it all the time. Other thing you wouldn't suspect is recycled water actually has it too. You take sanitary sewer water, you treat it, you don't necessarily destroy all the DNA. The DNA can be outside of a bacteria cell, but it can still be replicated by the machine. So recycled water can also have DNA in it as well. And this is one thing why Amber had good perspective on this. Like, hey, that's not a viable cell. It's not a cell that makes somebody sick. You just have a piece of DNA floating in the water that can be picked up through a sample. So we understood that, and this is part of investigation, trying to figure out if there are sources of DNA that don't correspond to a viable cell, a live cell that can make somebody sick. We need to know that as well.
Question.
Yes.
Wasn't there a part of the restaurant actually had some drippings as well?
Oh yeah, I'll show you in a second here.
Okay.
So okay, so just like the bacteria study, we also developed a human source-based conceptual model. And the idea is we want to categorize everything above ground, below ground, and actually go do the investigation to figure out if it's a problem or not. Is the contributor of genetic markers into the storm drain system. So in the visual surveys, we actually look for the items in the top of that little bubble. You know, RVs that were dumping their holding tanks into the gutter. We look for trash trucks that are leaking. Looking for dumpsters of trash cans that had obvious droppings below them that could be a source of bacteria. Are there restaurants that are mopping out potentially their restrooms and pouring that water in the street? Pools and hot tubs, landscaping, homeless camps, portable toilets. You know, construction projects have a little portable toilet there. Do we see them leaking, pouring down the gutter into the street? So these are all things we consider. We also consider everything below the ground. One of the things that we did as part of the study is we actually did a utility account analysis to look for, are there any homes or buildings in the watershed that don't have a sewer account attached to them. If they don't, that would suggest maybe there's a septic system there, right? And that could be a source as well. There were none of those. We also looked very extensively at the storm drain system through CCTV cameras, little robot machine with a camera on it. We drove down the pipes and looked at it. Same thing for the sewers as well. We looked for sewer lines that were cracked and leaking. We also looked for cross connections. So that's where somebody has done a renovation or a construction project and they've taken the sewer pipes and connected into the storm drain system. That's called a cross connection. We looked for those as well. They didn't show up. And then, of course, we went back to all the records where there was a reported sewer overflow. So that what I mean is, you see the water coming out of the manhole in the street, spilling out into the gutters. That's a sewer overflow event. We look for all of that. So try to be as extensive as possible and try to be as comprehensive as possible to find anything that will explain why we see human markers show up. All right. So back to your point, Susan, this is one of the things that we saw during the source investigation. This actually came through a resident at the time, Sarah Spinuzzi. She's actually with the Orange County Coastkeeper. She was aware of the study going on. She did locally, and so she would walk the beach and just take observations and give them to me during the course of the project. I saw this one on my own, and then she got the better photo, which is the soap on the beach. So this became one of our corrective actions to do. We actually went back and worked with the restaurant owner to have them fix their drain.
Yes.
We figured out why they were doing this and why it was happening, and they said, stop doing that because you're causing this kind of problem.
Yes.
We also followed the trash truck around. I literally walked behind it for days. And what we saw is, of course, spill on the ground right from the back of the trash truck. We saw where they would turn the corner and they would just spray across the street. So the photo in the middle, what you see is that spray on the street, that kind of that fantail. And if you look, there's a bright line of water running over the street. So that's somebody's sprinkler running over. So the trash truck dropped its wastewater over that flowing stream of water. So there's the connection. You see the trash truck liquids being picked up by irrigation water and being put in the drain system. And then the same thing. So the one on the right actually is the driveway out of the beach at the pier, where they come out after picking up the trash bins and they drop it right across the cross cutter. So as soon as you have water flow past that, it's going to pick it up and send it into the storm drain system.
Yeah.
And here's an example. We also did. This is the actual photograph of the underground camera inspection storm drain system, looking for cross connections. And so we saw things like cracks in the wall, leaking water into groundwater. That's why we targeted groundwater. So we thought if there's anything below the ground, sewer systems that are cracking, we're not going to be able to see those, but maybe we can pick them up in the storm drain system through a crack that's leaking groundwater into the pipe. We can go sample that and figure out if it has genetic markers in it. The photo in the lower right corner is the city's irrigation system in the park. And if you guys know anything about if you know about irrigation systems, that purple cap should mean something to you, right? That's the cap you use to indicate that it's recycled water, which can have DNA in it that is human specific. And what we found out is that that irrigation system uses potable. It's plumbed for future use of recycled water, but right now it's potable. And then the upper right corner, that's the actual sewer investigation performed by the city utility department. So everything green is where they actually took a camera down the sewer pipe to look at the pipe conditions. And if you can see it everywhere, you see a little red bar, that's where we found some sort of problem with the pipe. An offset crack, circumference crack, something that said this pipe needs to be replaced or slip lined. Most of the time, it's slip lining fixed the problem, but that's what we saw. Is there are places, and it makes sense. You know, it's a hillside, a lot of traffic. It's probably shifting with earthquakes and whatnot. These are old clay pipes; they're going to crack. But the city has a program in place for this. They do a once every 5 years complete survey of all the city. That's the state requirement. You inspect it, you identify it. If it's cracked, you slip line it. If it's a major problem, you replace it.
The slip line just inserting a seal within the existing pipe?
Correct. It's just a plastic sheet that gets put in there. It's like a balloon, essentially.
Wasn't that done 2 years ago?
The first round of slip line was done in 2020, and then they did, I think, a few iterations beyond that.
Okay, thank you. I remember they were doing it down by North Beach, or the outlet mall.
I mean, they do it every year. So
Okay.
the city's program is that once every 5 years, they do a complete citywide survey of all the sewer pipes. They also have a nationally established ranking system for how you classify pipe conditions. It's called NASCO, National Association of Sanitary Sewer something organizations. And what it gives you is a set of criteria. Says, it looks like this, it's this category. If it looks like that, it's that category. And you come up with a ranking of conditions, like, very good to very poor. And then that way you can prioritize your CIP projects to fix the ones that need the most. Or you say, okay, that one's got a low rating, it's okay, it's fine now, but let's keep track of it in the future. And that allows the city to prioritize its CIP budget to fix the ones that need the most.
Thank you.
All right, so what do we learn from this? Obviously, this was a long study. It started, 2018, took till 2020 to get the pigeon nets installed. Obviously, the source investigation went beyond that, sort of 2023. The main thing to recognize about these kind of studies is they take time. Water quality investigations of this nature and complexity takes time to develop. And this is always managing expectations with stakeholders, like, okay, guys, we're going to find the answer to this, we're going to get it done, just give us some time to get it done.
So, Ted, can you give some background on the bird deterrent netting? Because we kind of glossed over that. So
Correct.
There were other options looked at in terms of controlling the pigeon populations, right?
Correct. So, and in 2015, I worked with Nikki's predecessor, and we saw some initial rise in the beach postings, like I showed you before. And so the first project that was done is they actually netted from the restaurants out to the lifeguard tower. And the idea is, if that's where the birds are nesting, right over point zero, then let's get them out of that area. And so they put the nets in, and it didn't really move the needle very much. Because the problem is the main bulk of the population was roosting underneath the restaurant, over the sand. And the sand was really what's driving the issue. And so we looked at actually relocating the entire population, capturing them in a box, having somebody drive them out somewhere else and let them go. All right. There was
They
also
wouldn't repopulate? Meaning would just come back?
well, at the time I used to live in Linda Lake Beach, over by Marquita, and I would sit there in my apartment and I hear this, and I see this flock of pigeons flying towards the pier. I'm like, oh, they're coming back. There was also talk about just exterminating them, just have them come out and just get rid of them completely.
I think too there was a problem where, because of the roosting, the little ones couldn't get out of the nets. So we got complaints about, some of the younger birds getting strangled. So the public was not too happy about that.
No. And so I think the idea was to try to be as kind as possible, and then the final solution was we would install a net below the restaurant. And that's what I wanted to show you here in this slide, which is there was a pretty intensive net done below the restaurant. And this is a very similar approach that has been used elsewhere. They've done the same kind of thing at Baby Beach and Dana Point. They did it in the pier in Santa Monica. They had the same problem. They had birds roosting that caused bacteria problems. Same reason they had a TMDL that was driving their need to do this work. Pismo Beach. And so this was kind of a known quantity to actually install a net, and that would help remove the birds from under the pier.
And so what attracts the birds is that they like to nest under the pier? It's not the food from the restaurant that attracts the birds?
Correct.
Okay.
It's just the safety of the nesting space. And so there's a lot of nooks and crannies up in the rafters that they can climb into and rest. And of course they put nests up there and they have chicks, and so you just get, year after year, a population staying there. They learn to stay there. So the idea is we wanted to just exclude the area as possibilities. No roosting. There are still pigeons at the pier, but they're further out. But just where we have the most concern is they're no longer allowed to roost there. All right, so the question is, well, what benefit did this have? It's just nice expensive netting that didn't have a benefit? Well, actually, no. It actually provided a very direct, measurable benefit. So the red arrow shows when the study started, we were about just shy of 20 beach days per year. And then by the end, we were down to less than 5. So you can see that there's been the needle move as a result of the study. So that got us sort of off the chronic beach postings from the county. We also saw that our public relations problem kind of dissipated and went away. We went from the worst in the beach to the best in the state. Sorry, worst in the state to best in the state in 4 years. And this is an independent rating system. This is not generated by the city or the county or anybody else. This is an independent group of people that says, I got your data, I'm going to assess it, I'm going to assign a grade based on what I think is right, and here's your report card. So we got an A by 2022, and we're still on that A list.
And Heal the Bay and the county used this bacteria. You showed two different methods of analyzing the water. One was the genetic, one was the bacteria method.
Correct.
Bacteria was the one that
Correct.
they all use.
So for example, the county, when you exceed that single sample maximum, you get a beach posting. And then they come back and they retest again if you exceed the posting. If you have another exceedance, you stay on that beach posting until the geometric mean is met. And when you do that, each day you exceed, they start to expand out that posting distance. And so some days you saw like 500 feet both directions of the pier. That's because we were staying on that exceedance trajectory. And then what Heal Bay does is they take all the data from the county, all citizen scientist data, compile it, and then they analyze it, and they come up with their own rating system. They're similar; they have both the same message, but how they get to the end result is a little bit different. And of course, the big one we were most concerned about was the TMDL, the bacteria, the Twin Beaches and Creeks TMDL. And so there's 4 things on this chart I want to show you. The red dots are all the surf zone samples before the nets were installed. And that included the first nets that were installed in 2017, 18. So again, not much change in the results. But once the nets went under the pier, under the restaurant, that's the orange dots. And what you can see is within 1 year, they all drop down well below that red line, which is the numeric target. That's the geometric mean target we had to meet. And then the gray line on the right is the deadline. So all the orange dots need to be below the red line before the gray line. So we actually have written proof we actually met the deadline and we're not going to be subject to enforcement actions.
That's very interesting. I remember, Ted, do you remember there were the people who lived down there in that area, and they were complaining about having guests coming to swim.
Yeah.
And they were trying to pin you down to say, okay, how far can they go out in the water, or
Yes.
how many kids can be in there before they faint or fall over?
Yeah, I was there with, you remember Cynthia Mallett?
Oh yes.
I was with her the day that the F rating came out from Heal the Bay, and there was a blitz of calls to the city from businesses saying,
Yes.
what is going on at the beach? Why are you guys not taking care of this? This is so bad for the city.
Yes.
We're the worst ones in the state now. This is going to be detrimental to our business and our economy.
And it was.
Yeah, and so it really rose the level of concern, so that's why the city invested in the study.
But you did a great job.
And of course, the other thing we learned too is that through all the collective actions that were done and all the investigations, site investigations, we can say with a high level of confidence, human sources are not a concern for the Pier Bowl. Why is that important? Well, for the study it was important because we got the goal the way we wanted to, but we also have another regulatory goal coming up in a few years. There's a wet weather numeric target that has to be met by April 4th, 2031. So imagine as a city you have to capture all the rainwater, disinfect it, and release that water back into the surf zone. That's a massive, expensive project. Mm-hmm. And what they're talking about is actually creating a pathway for compliance that's based on HF 183.
Oh.
So if you can show that your runoff in wet weather doesn't have bacteria levels that a certain concentration, you're actually considered in compliance with the wet weather TMDL. So when I talk about capturing the water, what I mean is a tank underground that's probably several million gallons in size or larger. Every time it rains, you got to capture it, chlorinate it, disinfect it, and then release the water back into the ocean, or pump it into the sewer system. You're not going to do disinfection. Pump it in the sewer system over days, weeks, months, whatever it takes to drain that thing down. It's a very expensive, very intensive project, so we don't want to go down that path. So we think this is a good precedent for what we can do next with the weather team deal. It also serves as a model for what to do with Poche Beach. Right, so I'm not just saying this, what I actually mean is our data actually shows that our actions actually resulted in beneficial. So what you see is the initial source characterization sample sets for the north storm drain, the south storm drain, on the leftmost of each blocks. And so the north storm drain, you see that there are 3.92 million copies per sample. That is the same level as untreated sewage.
So you're saying the north is Poche?
North storm drain.
Okay.
That's underneath the pier. There are two pipes that come out under the restaurant. There's a left pipe and a right pipe. You're facing upstream. You're facing towards the restaurants. The one on the left I call north. The one on the right I call south. So the one on the left, the north storm drain, had HF93 results that were equivalent to untreated sewage. Really, really high. Which maybe makes sense now when you think about the trash trucks, possibly leaking sewer systems. We did find that there are a number of private laterals, it's from a business or a home to the city's line, that were cracked and leaking as well. They could have been a source. So after the first round of source abatements, you can see the levels actually dropped below that red line. And the red line is the standard set by the Jesus program. It's based on a human health risk evaluation, saying that's a level that what people think you are safe to swim in the waters if you're below that red line. That's the same line as what the EPA uses for the bacteria standards. It's roughly 30 people per 1,000 get sick. That's what they consider to be acceptable levels of illness rates. And so on the south storm drain, you see is that we did the source characterization, source abatement. We didn't change the needle very much, and then we went back again and did more intensive analysis and investigations. And you see that the second source abatement results actually dropped well below the red line as well. So there's a measurable change in the genetic marker results that shows that source abatement was successful. And that's why we think human sources are not a priority for this watershed.
Ted, you know how bad we have the bacteria at Poche. Would you think that using some of the skills that you and the tools that you had, do you think that that would manifest in some positivity with Poche?
Yes, and they did. What we did for the pier, they're using the same exact approach in Poche as well.
Yeah, and Ted's referring to the comprehensive human waste source reduction strategy, or choosers.
Yes.
And I think we've discussed that briefly in this forum in the past.
Yes.
There have been a lot of repairs that the city has done on its wastewater collection system to address the findings of that program. So I think it does make a difference, and it definitely helps target like the high risk sources of bacteria, like Ted is saying, the ones from human waste. Whether or not we can target all sources of fecal indicator bacteria in the watershed through this specific source abatement process remains to be seen, but
yeah. I mean, the bacteria can come from things that you don't want to control, like possums and raccoons and other animals that live in the watershed.
goats eating vegetation.
Yeah.
Well, we've tried the wolves and the hawks and everything else, so.
Yeah.
Are the goats being, that's a new development, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When did the goats start?
I mean, I would hope that that's a pretty nominal amount of input into the watershed, but something to consider.
It's non-zero. It's
No.
a good point. Where the goats are only in the Talega area, or are they?
I think they're at Vista Hermosa Sports Park, which drains primarily to
Tiga,
like the
right?
North Beach watershed, but there may be some connectivity on the kind of towards the Target side if they were to go onto that other side of Vista Hermosa. But yeah, I think right now they're in the Secunda de Session watershed.
Okay.
All right, that's my last slide. Yeah, any public comments?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. This was a great
Wow.
It was.
fusion of several scientific techniques and methods and existing information and existing staff and existing programs combined with new data collection that really made a significant difference in the city. And so it's important for us to just take a moment in the water quality realm to step back and look at what we've achieved instead of always just struggling with the current projects, because there could be lessons learned and there are also successes to be celebrated. So thank you, Ted.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, yeah, comment. And to me. Pigeon.
Oh, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So on your previous slide, did you say that there is a regulatory standard for HF 183? Because that.
It's right now. It's more of a guiding principle. I would call it. It's kind of a guideline.
Mm-hmm.
That's the red line is a numeric value that was calculated by a bunch of scientists who do risk assessments, and it said you can look at diluted sewage and water, and you can figure out at what level of dilution does the bacteria levels equal the current illness rate that are used for indicated bacteria.
So that's the same incremental health risk as the standards for the fecal indicator bacteria.
Correct.
But that kind of concerns me because the reclaimed water is very high at HF 183, right? So if you have any leakage of reclaimed water used for landscape irrigation, it contributes to this number, but yet it doesn't have an actual human health risk. Or if the component does not come from the fecal indicator bacteria. So it really puts the city in kind of a weird position, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a false positive basically.
Right.
You're finding DNA that could be high.
Yeah.
You know, like, where's this coming from? Do I have an SSO problem? You know, overflowing sewer? Do I have people that are dumping their holding tanks from the RVs down the gutter? Like, where's this coming from? And so, you know, we looked at things like, is there any recyclable water usage in this watershed? No, there's no purple pipes anywhere. Is the street sweeper hooking up to a recyclable water system to sweep the streets? Like, oh my God, when they spray for dust, they use recyclable water, which has genetic marker in it that dogs can be a source as well. They can actually convey HF23 as well. And so you have to kind of just take the data at face value and then work your way up the branches of the tree to figure out which one's coming from, right? You have to do the investigation, say, just because you find it doesn't mean you should be alarmed, but you should start thinking about where it's coming from. What's your possible options? So for example, in Pochi, in the watershed, recyclable water is used a lot of places.
Right.
And in some places it's being oversprayed in the streets. But the nice thing is that the city's the recyclable water coordinator has the authority to shut off those sprinklers. You can say, you can't do this, and turn sprinklers off, make them fix their sprinklers. So it's kind of an iterative process that way. And what you really care about in the end is, do you have a source of HF183 that's coming from sewage, where the HF183 inside of live cells? Because that will indicate you're going to have a human health risk show up in your watershed. And so the Choose program, that's their focus, is to sort of parse those out. Like, is it sewage? Is it recycled water? Is it something else? And they come up with different metrics of how to sort of put the data in the different buckets to figure out where you are. Like, recycled water and sewage have different chemical signatures. Not just HF23, but there are other compounds that show up differently depending on where it comes from. And then they use those ratios to figure out which of the buckets it belongs in. It's one of the tools we're actually using for choosers.
Yeah, we've discussed that a few times in here briefly, that there are signatures you can use to distinguish between live and inert HF183.
Is it like, can you add a tracer to recycle water?
Humans do. Well, humans do, because they look for things like sucralose, which are like artificial sweeteners, and they look for acetaminophen, which are basically Tylenol, right? Yeah, so, and those decay in different, basically they have different concentrations. I'm not really
it's fine.
Yeah, they show up differently in different concentrations in treated wastewater versus live human waste. So.
Okay.
And there are techniques to how to remove the free DNA from the samples. You can chemically treat your sample before you run it through your machine, and it pulls out all of the loose free DNA, and then it only has the cells that are left behind. And if there are live viable cells, those get ruptured later, and the DNA spills out, and you measure those.
So
there's a way you can
those live cells
chemically.
are the only things that could get you sick, right? Is that
Correct.
what we're saying? Like, it
Yeah,
needs to be a
it's-
live cell, not a but not a killed gray
And
cleaned.
so when we were in the study, Amber was doing that sort of that side investigation as well. So her permit got tagged with HF183. And she's like, guys, this is a misleading standard you applied to us. And so what they did is they actually did a study to figure out how do you treat a sample chemically, take out all the loose DNA, the free DNA, and only have what's left over. And so when you actually do those tests on some of the samples, you don't get any HF183 out of it. Even though you run the sample unadulterated, you get a result. You treat it chemically and it disappears. You go, oh, that was free DNA.
And so is that a way for the city to control its water usage?
No, it's a way for you to test. So you
Okay.
take the first sample, you get a high result, then you do the chemical treatment. The problem with the chemical treatment is it's very, very expensive.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it a lot. You use it more for investigation to direct your efforts rather than routine ongoing sampling.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I had a question about the sampling of the actual ocean water samples. Are they taken right where essentially standing in the sand, sampling the water as it comes in right there?
Yep.
Have they collected any data to go out a greater distance from shore to see how quickly the concentrations go down? Because I would think, there's a few little kids, that are standing knee deep in water who are going to be right in that zone, but the majority of the human exposure are the surfers who are in for hours, and they're, a minimum of 4 feet or deeper, so they're offshore like 100 feet or more. Do we know how quickly those concentrations decrease? Because I would think with the longshore currents, they would drop off very rapidly.
That was built into the standards when they developed the Assembly Bill 411 standards. They actually did the comparison. So what the standard is that you have to sample ankle-deep water, and that becomes your measurement criteria for whether a beach is protective or not.
That's the highest potential exposure?
Yeah, so what they said is if you see a sample that exceeds there, then you have to assume that it's going to be the same where the surfers are sitting as well. There's no differentiation. It's like, oh, it's high here, it's low there. They don't draw the distinction. If it's high where you sample, it's high out there as well. And so that's why it's more protective for the people that are surfing as well. So that when you sample, you're supposed to take the sample on an incoming wave, not hitting the sand, but just the water itself, and then ankle deep, no more than ankle deep. You can go up knee deep further out, but the standard is basically just ankle deep water.
That must really bias the values on the high side, though.
It does, but it's more protected that way as well.
Any other questions for our guest? Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
It was an outstanding presentation.
Yeah.
It was long.
It was a long study, so we appreciate that time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Did you say that there's a report that's written up of it?
Yeah, it's a very lengthy, probably 100 pages plus, multiple chapters. It goes through the entire process. It talks about the orientation, the motivation, it gives you technical background, gives you some terminology guidance, and then it goes into the source characterization and then each abatement project, and then, there's human source investigation and then source abatement. So it does the complete cycle of all the information.
Yeah, that's posted on our city website under the Clean Ocean Program and Water Quality Programs. I believe it was linked in the agenda packet that's online for this meeting. But if you need help finding it, just let me know.
Well, that's good to know.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Alrighty. I have some people in the audience who would like to speak on oral communications. I think the first card I got was from Susie Whitelaw. Is she still here?
I think she stepped out, but her person's here.
Okay.
So I don't know where she went to.
Alrighty, the next person would be Amanda. We have two here, Amanda. You can start with which one you would choose.
Oh, just oral communications, and I'll speak on the other time. Good afternoon, committee members. Firstly, I want to thank the Coastal Advisory Committee members for their hard work. It was quite disappointing to know the decision that the City Council members made to discontinue the Coastal Advisory Committee. And I guess, however, the good news is that 2 members from the Coastal Advisory Committee will be added to the Beaches, Parks, and Recreation Commission. However, that's going to make a 9 commission member, and that's going to be hard. But I want, from the start, there was a delay in getting this started. The Coastal Advisory Committee could have started in 2023, but it didn't start until January of 2024, and that was unfortunate because there was a loss of time and hard work that could have been done. I was going to, I had something that I was going to say, but it changed with Mr. Ted Von Bittner's presentation. And this presentation was so important, and after 6 years to have listened to this is just extensive work, and I really appreciate that he has come here today and spoke. And this was equally as important as the presentations from the Coastal Frontiers, Dr. Brett Sanders, Jamie Timberlake, and of course Nikki Beach's presentations that she had at the Coastal Advisory Committee meetings, and I really appreciate that for her dedication, as well as your dedication as well. But I also, in listening to Mr. Von Bittner's presentation, I am always impressed by Chair Susan Ambrose for the level of knowledge. It's just amazing. I'm quite moved because to know what happened previously at the other Coastal Advisory Committee meetings, I attend City Council meetings, and to know that there isn't anybody on the City Council meeting today that has a lot of institutional knowledge and actually history of San Clemente, and that recall to come back and say, this happened here, oh, remember this, and could add and contribute to each meeting. That is just sensational. So I'm very impressed with Chair Ambrose, and thank you so much. The vast knowledge, and someone who has lived here for over 50 years, I'm just quite impressed. And so I just want to thank you for your dedication, as well as Mr. Dolakowski and John Dow and Richard Ayer and Matthew Schmidt for your hard work as well, and those who weren't here today. But I know it's disappointing, and but I applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attendance and your comments. I appreciate that. Alrighty. We've got some unfinished business. And that is, what do you think, Zach? Should we do the work plan right now?
Yes.
It's an awkward situation. Are we doing a work plan when we're not going to be here?
Well, we're reporting on the ongoing work plan, hopefully what you've been up to the last couple months.
Okay.
I know at least some of the subcommittees have had activity.
Yes, I think all of us have had in some way. Why don't we start with the sand acquisition subcommittee with Rick and and John, and Deke is not coming today. He had other plans.
That's correct. So I'll report on behalf of our subcommittee. The most important and significant potential for additional sand on our beaches is the commitment by OCTA to put 500,000 cubic yards of sand on our beach. We were hopeful that project would have occurred prior to this winter storm season. That unfortunately didn't happen, and the concern is that there hasn't been substantial progress towards getting that sand. There's both the permitting and the logistics of getting the sand on the beach. And the concern further is that OCTA may not be overly motivated, and we certainly want to see that sand on the beach prior to next winter storm season. So the effort is to coordinate or assist in any way possible in getting the necessary approvals and applying the necessary pressure to make sure that that sand gets on San Clemente beaches.
Thank you. Alrighty. Let's go to Sand Retention Subcommittee. We've got Matthew, and John. Do you have some speaking that you'd like to do for sand retention?
I have an Zach, can I send you an image and can you put it up there? Or Miley? No? No.
And do you need the picture to talk?
No. It was just a good summary picture of the sand
Oh, okay.
retention. It's a satellite imagery that I recently saw. We can put it on. Apparently, we have a May meeting. Is that true?
That's undetermined.
Okay.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
My paper said that we were still on for May.
This is still an active committee, so we're recommending you adjourn until May, but we don't know for sure.
I see,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
So I would just say that we would like to compile some notes to pass along to the new Parks and Rec team on retention.
I think that's a good idea.
I don't know if that needs to be voted in or something, or if it's just a courtesy bullet point like summary of what we've been doing.
No, actually, we did the same thing when Coastal Advisory got broken up again. We decided, just like you're just suggesting, that we would put in a whole work plan for them for the year. And we merged some of the things that we were doing that were working out really well, and some that were waiting on the shelf for us to try. So they were very pleased.
I like kind of trying to pass our work plan with notes to the new subcommittee that will
Yes.
be developed on the Parks and Rec one. Again, I don't know if we need to vote on that,
What do you think?
or if it's just a courtesy. Like,
I don't think we need to vote. Your client is ultimately the city council. You're producing work for the city council and produces work for the people of San Clemente. So you should write up the notes that you've done and the work you've done over really the last year and a half.
okay,
And then the city council can do with that what they may.
okay, perfect.
John, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Regarding?
briefly summarize in regarding to sand retention that
Okay.
Matt and Brian and I met a few weeks ago. We tried to get together, in between the bi-monthly Coastal Advisory Committee meetings, and we focus mostly on the need to make sure that that the city continues to monitor the sand, the beach width. They have an ongoing program, but we all agree that if they had additional transects beyond what's being monitored, that would be very helpful to actually see which direction the sand is moving laterally. And it's important that the funding for fiscal year 26-27 be set in motion. I believe we're just funded up through 2025 right now. And the last issue was to identify other beach width monitoring activities using GIS or satellite imaging. And Brian had also suggested using artificial intelligence to estimate the beach area.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with how that can be applied?
No, but I just have something to get. It's something to add to your second point.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about AI. I'm a hydrologist.
There, so.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So on the transect part of it, it is the sand retention subcommittee's recommendation that the city look for alternative and kind of complementary programs to the biannual surveys, right? And whether that's partnering with junior guards or setting up a high school survey team to go out there and maybe do it quarterly, so add to the biannual. Those types of volunteer projects, I think the youth, it's not very difficult to go out in the surf with a 30-foot boom and stick it on the floor and measure. It's not rocket science, and it's a good introduction to surveying. I think that we agreed on the retention, that in order to retain our sand, you have to know what the sand is doing. And the only way to do that is through constant monitoring. And if we ever do lose funding from the environmental consultants, then you have backups, right? So that was, I think, the action item from those observations, John, was what I was going to add to.
I think that would be very valuable, and I think I would recommend that your subcommittee get together maybe this month or next month and put something together so that when we do come back in May, or if we don't come back in May, we have something to pass on that's useful.
Sure.
And it is also, remember when the last time we met, we had the 3 speakers, and it was Brad, is it Saunders?
Yeah.
He was the one who said that he had put in a request for a grant to double the testing, etc.
Yeah,
So right now he does it twice a year, and so he said he would go four times a year.
Yeah, the 4 times a year, I think, is what the city should aim for in terms of monitoring. I don't think you need to add transect. And again, this wasn't fully discussed, but in a personal opinion, I don't think you need to add transects because you have enough of them to get a story of what's happening in our littoral cell, our little, from Dana Point to San Mateo Point, right? Like that kind of, that area, there's 12 transects, and it's enough. So yeah, we'll take that. I don't.
But I think that's something that he would really appreciate. Remember, he agreed that all of you were very brainy.
Yeah. It would just be an interesting. I don't know how that would work with a recommendation to set up a scholastic program or something. I mean, San Clemente High School has an environmental science program. One of their students, 2 of their students can volunteer to put on swim fins.
That's another thing that we could do. Could I interrupt this and go back to oral communication so that we can give Susie a chance up here? I apologize to my colleagues here. Susie, would you like to come up? We tried to find you earlier. We got kind of carried away with a wonderful presentation, though.
I'm sorry, the city manager had called me. Is it on? The city manager had called me and I had to take the call. But I just want to take a minute and thank all of you for everything that you've done for our city. I understand that you may not be meeting in May or meeting again. And I think it's really unfortunate because I think you've just gotten up to speed and got enough momentum where we're really about to see a lot of payoff from your great work. And I hope that all of you maintain your, if the committee goes away, I hope that you all maintain your activity. And I would love to hear your downloads. If the city doesn't want to know what your work plan and everything is, Save Our Beaches really wants to know all of your thoughts on everything and are willing to move things together. Just with respect to the beach with monitoring, we have been off and on trying to get that going. We've got a guy with a drone who can send it out from his balcony and in 10 minutes get all of the transects. The difficulty is in figuring out exactly where to draw the line that would be the mean low water that the city uses. And it's a little more difficult than you would imagine. So I would like additional expertise to figure that out, and then we could do that very quickly and efficiently. He could do it once a week. So we've got a lot of volunteers to do that. And whatever we can use, if you guys want to work with Save Our Beaches, that would be really, really great. We would like to continue the great work that you've done. And thank you, Chair, for letting me speak.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with your ideas. Thank you. Well, gentlemen, what do you think about the offer? It's something that you could get together and talk about doing something to support SOB.
Yeah.
Sure.
particularly since you're already in a program. Susie, are you doing anything with Brett Summers? Sanders, I'm sorry, thank you.
Not directly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we communicate back and forth.
Well, I still think that would be a very good place to sit down and have a talk with him and see what he can infuse, let's say, into what you guys would like to do. Because I know you have some really great ideas. Mr. Ayer, do you have some comments that you'd like to share with us? In terms of sand retention or sand acquisition?
Nothing specific, no.
Okay. Well, then on the water quality, I have a whole bunch of little things that we wrote down for some time. But then I also want to, John, if you don't mind, I'll call on you as well
Sure.
to add to this. We had a list of things that we thought we would be doing when we talked about water quality. And this is firstly when I got a call from Jamie Timberlake, a friend of mine, who's we all know who she is. She's just a dynamic person, a scientist, and all involved in the things that make your city more beautiful and your water cleaner. And so at any rate, that was one of the things that I wanted to do, is take her up on her invitation to come down whenever we wanted to. So we took advantage of that, and we went down, and we lucked out because that invitation took us to the city council, who was deciding on the councils that they were, or the consultants that they were going to hire that night to begin the great change in the beaches and the sands and all of that kind of thing. So that was really a fun thing. And from that, we got other invitations to go and meet with the businessmen who help make decisions and help give information about what they think in terms of their economics and how can they help, what kind of ideas can they give to the government that they didn't have already, and all of these kinds of ideas. And so that was another thing that we were invited to. We caught up with that fellow at one of the SOB things before the BB went out to the voters. So it was very nice to listen to him and some of the things that they were doing with business. I think that would be a great idea for our city to do, is to make a business and community like a subcommittee or some kind of, we can make a nice sound what it's going to be, but I think we get a lot of information from the people who live here and work here and use industry here. So that one was important to me, and the other things that we were doing. And then just even walking down from the pier, from Dana Point all the way down to, where's that place that you live, Susie? What's that beach?
The Cypress Shores.
What was that?
Cypress Shores.
Thank you very much. I knew it when we were walking there, but right now I couldn't think of it. Yes, and what we found, I think we were at about 4 hours. We stopped and talked to so many people, and they were asking why we were taking pictures, so many pictures, and we were asking them why were they sitting this far, and you could see the differences between the erosion already when we first started this, and it was so amazing to get the people's input and their reaction on what could they do to make it better. So those kinds of speakeasy type things might be a good thing for you and SOB to have those talks and invite the people who, and you could have just some little, tete-a-tetes if you wanted to. But I think that would grow into a community that would really want to do things to help you. There's a lot of very skilled people in our city. And that's just an idea and another suggestion. But even when we're talking about sand retention, excuse me, and even water quality and all of these things, that I've got things all over here, and the report that Dave Ravensdorf gave to us on the retreat day was just so dynamic. It was, I think he had all his screens, and he had his microphone, and I think he spoke, Don, don't you think he spoke at least an hour and 45 minutes?
Which meeting are you referring to?
The retreat.
Well, I don't think it was that long, but I do agree that it was really good. And by the way, he summarized the information in a document, which is, and if you look at the city meeting, which was on February 13th, there's a link there to his report, which summarizes a lot of information about where the city gets its water, the various sources they're looking at for the future, big capital programs they're considering and are actually in the works. So it's a great summary.
It is a great summary, and I think I probably extended the time because the city council had a lot of questions, and it was a real good back and forth knowledge for them. So, and it was nice to see that they took enough time to talk to him. And so if they were there on a retreat, so to speak, they weren't counting minutes. They were getting ideas, and somebody would say, well, why would you do it this way? What about this? And then they talked to Dave, and David said, well, remember we've got 2 grants, and we're going to wait on this one. We have other things that we need to do before we start on this, and it's programmable, and it's sequential, and these kinds of things. But that's another thing that I'd like to stay really involved in, the things that Dave is doing, and Nikki as well. So, and Nikki, you're just outstanding in the work that you do. So I appreciate it when you're here. So, John, do you want to share some other things that you've been doing, for example, on Pochi and the other things that we've been doing?
Well, yeah, I made a little list of what we have done since the last meeting. And the first thing was attending that retreat. I don't know why they use that term, but the meeting of the City Council on February 13th. And one of the primary reasons for that meeting was to decide how they were going to configure the committees and commissions in the future. So it was somewhat eye-opening to me that the number of hours that city staff spend to support these committees, and it's a real issue for them, both trying to get their work done and cost-wise. So something to keep in mind for the future, so that we can maybe have more things done by the committees, but perhaps not taking as much time for the city staff. And in addition to the paper that you referenced about Dave Rubenstein with the water projects, also Leslie Myeroff prepared a good summary of the coastal projects, which I believe was included in to the members of the meeting as a handout.
Yes.
That's worth taking a look at. And Matt and Brian and I met separately as a subcommittee for sand retention on February 27th. And Susan and I attended a meeting of the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee, which is part of Moulton-Nagel Water District, on March 6th.
Yes.
And I have to say, there was not much was accomplished in my opinion, but they talked about the Rain Smart rebates and whether to proceed on a potential basin study, which I've done some of those. They're very, very time consuming and expensive. I'm not so sure that's really necessary at this point. And I've been in communication with Dave Rubensdorf in regards to revising that presentation that I put together on Pochi Beach, to make something really short to dovetail into the presentation that he gives to the City Council in regards to funding the new water diversion structure for Pochi Beach, which will essentially during the dry season, it will divert all the flow from that drainage into a pipeline which already exists out to Dana Point, and then it will be piped offshore into the existing outfall where it'll be, I think that outfall is like 2 miles offshore, I believe, so it's highly diluted, and that would pretty much remove 100% of the bacterial load during the dry season. During the wet season, the water would still be flowing through, of course. And that's about it. I attended the city council meeting a couple days ago along with Susan to plead our case to maintain an active presence of this committee in the future, and to give some recommendations on how we can make those meetings more effective. That's it.
Thank you. And I think I just wanted to add on a tag there. When we went to the water district, I think that was really an administrative meeting. Wouldn't you think so, Nikki? A lot of it was more academic rather than they didn't have too many presentations, I think 3 on action that they were taking. But I think they said they were going to have the more active one, was it in June?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this mic is working, but Nikki Beach, Environmental Programs Analyst. The South Orange County Integrated Watershed Management area or committee, executive committee,
Yes.
was primarily chartered and tasked with helping distribute integrated watershed management grant funds from the state.
Okay.
So that's kind of their charter. And as Prop 1 funds have kind of been already kind of doled out,
Yes.
they're really kind of running out of funding for that particular program, but there's some interest in transitioning the committee to help address, and of course now I'm drawing a blank, but the new proposition that just passed in November statewide to
Yes.
the climate action bonds.
Yes.
So there may be some connection there, even though it's technically not integrated watershed management funding. So we are kind of in a holding pattern with that group, where the group is going through some growing pains of its own, trying to figure out what it's doing. So, but it is a resource to gather with both water agencies and municipalities to discuss like the one water approach to managing our stormwater and our water supplies under one roof, which is valuable in a sense because we're looking at so many multi-benefit projects between water supply and stormwater quality control.
Yeah, I think so too. And you had talked about that anyway with the gutters and making cleaning your houses and your yards cleaner and with less water, etc. We could still probably, maybe that might be something that we could add for you when we cross over, so to speak, or at least give our recommendations over to VPNR. We can sit down with or email, or well, actually my email's not working right now, but we could sit down with you and put something together.
Yeah,
That
I look
would
forward to
reflect-
collaborating. Sure.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. Well, another thing that I did is we went to the OC Climate Action Plan public input meeting that Supervisor Foley put on, and I didn't stay for the whole thing because there was a city council meeting that I had to hurry up back and go to that meeting. But I would suggest to anybody who's interested to get involved, because she is one sharp lady and she really knows how to get people on the pace with her and on the walk with her. So if you want something from her, or you want something from the county, or anything like that, I would suggest that you call her, give her your ideas, and tell her what you're looking for and how could she help you. Just a flattering kind of thing for you to think about. And then,
Sorry, can I just interject? If we're still on item 5, we should be reporting on work plan items, and I think specifically we're on water quality. Item 7 is for committee members to talk about any activity they were involved in the last couple of months.
okay, well, I just jumped ahead, so I wanted to be sure that these people wouldn't go because I know he's got a baby at home. I'm not sure how long he'll stay here with us. But anyway, okay, let us go to the plans then, the work plans. What else did you want me to do other than what we talked about?
Items from staff.
No, I think we just finished item 4, the work plan, so we should be going to item 5, which is new business, and that's another presentation from Nikki.
Okay, we can do that. Nikki, I think that this microphone over here on the side is a lot better for
This
you.
one's the better one? Okay. Just because I know we have people that may be listening to the recording, and this may be important, in particular to the applicants for this program. So I'm here again as Environmental Programs Analyst Nikki Beach to present briefly on the Environmental Sustainability Grant Award recommendations that were in your packet. There's a more detailed report in your packet, but I did provide a quick visual overview just so we can go over it. So the Environmental Sustainability Grant Program was started, gosh, I want to say about 15 years ago. I don't have the exact date on my mind right now. And the intent is to set aside a small amount of city budget funds to provide funding for nonprofits in the community that are achieving environmental goals through their own projects, kind of a public-private partnership, if you will. This year, we only had one funding cycle. Technically, we're supposed to have 2, but right around 2020 when the pandemic hit and we had some staff changes and we also had the Clean Ocean fee go away, there was kind of a lapse in the program as we were regrouping to figure out how to continue this non-essential but very beneficial program. And so thanks to some community interest, we were able to get a funding cycle started up pretty quickly early this year with applications due near the end of February. So we had $8,000 available this year. Again, we don't have any Clean Ocean fee funding for this program, but we do have funding from the solid waste and water conservation programs, which is wonderful because the Environmental Sustainability Grant Program does go across all kinds of environmental initiatives from water quality to recycling and waste reduction and water and other energy reduction projects. So we had $8,000 available and we received 8 applicants during the application window, which is great. There are some really cool groups doing some interesting projects. And all of those applicants were deemed eligible for the program. And here's basically the summary of the recommendations. These recommendations came out of a discussion among the Environmental Grant Committee, which is comprised of myself and our water conservation analyst and also our solid waste and recycling coordinator. So the general consensus among the grant committee, especially for this round of funding, was to provide resources to as many eligible nonprofits as possible. So that's why a lot of these groups requested the maximum grant amount of $2,000, but were only recommended for funding for $1,000. This is the next step in the process, just to, per the grant policies, to run it by the Coastal Advisory Committee. In the future, I guess we could also run it through the Beaches, Parks and Recreation Committee, which I think was done in the past when there was no Coastal Advisory Committee. And then the city manager has the final sign-off under the policy. So if there are any questions, I will entertain them now.
Nikki, how many years has this grant project been in effect?
Yeah, if I'm thinking of the original policy and procedure, I think it was written in 2009. So yeah, there was an update in 2013. And then, like I said, there was a lapse from basically 2020 to 2024.
So 10 to 14 times they made grants of this type?
Yes, so yeah, the grants are typically issued, or the call for grants, and then any grant funding that goes out is twice a year. There have been some cycles in the past where we get minimal interest, and so maybe only one nonprofit throws in for $2,000. So our budget is not always spent for this program historically, but and then of course our budget can vary depending on available amounts. So
what's been the range of funds that have been available for this project annually?
Historically, I think it was, let me think,
2,000 is the max.
2,000 per applicant.
The grand total.
In the past, I think we had, I want to say we had another, it was, when I started with the city in 2016, I think it was 12,000 per year, with another 4,000, like another 4,000 added, due to 3 different programs contributing budget money.
Alright.
So,
8,000 is on the low end.
yeah, 8,000 is less than normal, but it's more than the typical round of funding that we've seen in the past because we had 2 per year, so we usually had 6,000 per 6 months. So, we did have a little more than we would have normally if we had just been on the 6-month cycle, which we hope to resume going forward. I would like to say that we hope to get back on schedule and have another call for applications that would be due on June 15th in consistency with the policy procedure. So that's coming up quick, and that money would be pulled from the fiscal year 2026 budget.
And I think I saw that you put out a notice to apply for these grants on the
Yes,
1st of February, and then it was required by the end of February for the applicants to
Right.
submit their.
The 27th.
Is that typical, just to 30 days or a month to respond to this? And how is
Yeah.
the notification? Is it just something that's published?
Yeah.
or-
that's good. That's a good question. Those are good questions. In the past, we never really had like a 30-day window because it was such a regular cycle that I think a lot of nonprofits in the city knew that it was coming up, and we would start pushing for applications to be turned in probably as early as 2 months in advance. But in interest of getting everybody aware that this program is coming back, I did comb through our business license system and try to pull up any nonprofits that do business and see if I could get an active email address. I got a lot of bounce backs, but I did my best. I sent out some letters to those that I didn't have email addresses for. And then I published a couple ads in the St. Many Times.
All
And
right.
it was on our website too, I should add.
All right, so we feel that we provide sufficient notice for anybody that was eligible to respond to the request. And all these folks that have are either schools or registered 501c3 nonprofit organizations.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right, well, it seems like a reasonable amount to me, consistent with the past, and I'll be voting for it.
You know, I think this is a great way to also mentor our schools when we can, and also the nonprofits that might be interested in these things, because they might start, and it sounds good at the beginning, but just even having somebody who's had a nonprofit or who's done something for one of the schools, for example, go over and sit down with them and tell them how their project worked, etc. One of the things that I liked that I had asked to be added is that the winners or the people who were selected to get these prizes of money to do these things actually come back and give a report to us so that we know if it was effective. Is this good material to do with something else, or a different grade level, or a different topic, or anything like that. And that went over pretty well. So just sharing with you.
Yeah, I should add that grant recipients are required to submit a report at the end of their
Yes.
project completion. It's a written report. It's not super complex. You
Yes.
don't want to create more work for nonprofits that may have limited resources already and are only receiving a small amount from the city. But we do require that report if they are to apply in the future for this program. So if they do not submit the report, they will not be eligible for future cycles. A couple of these applicants had, things had fallen through the cracks. There had been a change of hands, and so they did have to submit their report prior to submitting their application for this round.
Well, it's interesting. I remember the water use in different sizes of not only pots but soil, or the kinds, or the higher beds that they're putting. And sure, what is it? What is the name of the vice of our medium middle school?
Short Coast Middle School?
Yes, thank you very much. They did a big giant vegetable base. It probably was 1/4 of this whole room right here. And when they finished, and they did it on water, and they did it with fertilizer, and they did it with all kinds of things. And when these things were growing, they went down and they spoke to some of the chefs in some of the restaurants and invited them to come and see their vegetable beds. And at that time, then what happened is some of the chefs would say, "So what are you going to do with this when you're done?" And they offered to come and teach them what to do and how to cook vegetables. So that was on a Saturday, and it started at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was over at 4 p.m., and it was just crowded with community members and students who had big, giant smiles on their faces. It was a very successful thing. And some of the people even went to the city council, and we had the city council congratulate them for their success. So just sharing the things of the past.
Yeah, that's the kind of application that at least I feel like the committee really values too. I know we have some things that have to do with like Arbor Day and this round of funding, that applying for Clean California designations, and even just like some of these beach cleanups that Surfrider does. They're a regular presence in our community, and they really benefit. The frequent and positive exposure of our citizens to environmental initiatives. So I think that is a really important thing that we look at when we look at these applications, and we'll continue to look at going forward.
Thank you very much, Nikki. John, would you like to make a motion?
I don't think we're looking for a motion of approval. We're looking for your comments on the program and the grantees. The city manager has the authority to approve this.
We're just reviewing it, and so if nobody else has any comments, why don't we just wrap it up?
I have a comment and a question if I could. Amanda, you want to speak? Go ahead.
I didn't know was there going to be public comments, or are you going to deliberate? Or?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that yours was on this subject. Please come up.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's one of those strange meetings because it's, bittersweet, that it's the last meeting, and the circumstances. But I'm here to, I just, when I was looking at this agenda item, I don't know what was the emphasis as far as the recommendations, and I'm glad that everybody's going to be getting some funding there. And but I wanted to just say that as a member of the St. Committee Garden Club, I definitely support them, and I know that they also do beach cleanups on their own, and so I don't think they requested any money, but I think that's really commendable of them, that there's a group of people that do that from the St. Committee Garden Club. And also with knowing former trustee Patricia Holloway, I've attended participated in Arbor Day tree planting in the Jim Johnson Memorial Park last year, and previously at St. Committee High School. And as an alumni, I think that's really important to be supportive of that. And also last year, I mentioned the Jim Johnson Memorial Park, but that was with the effort of the St. Committee Rotary, and I really appreciate all the work that they've done, and that's really important. And as a Las Palmas Piper alumni, I really am glad that you are supporting our schools and Las Palmas Elementary especially, and I really am grateful for that. And of course, St. Committee High School, Blue Oceans Club, and really commendable. And I've heard really great things about community outreach from other people that they have helped at their organizations with helping the Marines, and so that's really commendable about that. I think the only one that I would cut personally would be Surfrider Foundation, because they did not help us fight the toll roads, but that's just on a personal note. Unfortunately, they decided not to help us through our 5-year fight. But anyways, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad that everybody's getting that money. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for being such a good community involved lady.
Well, you know, living here for over 50 years, I just love this, our town, and you know, everybody has a chance and the ability to help any way they can, whether it's doing something on their own or helping with one way or another. And I think that just living here, it's just so easy to do, and at different levels of participation. And I think that's really great.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Mr. Dologowski, for mentioning Dave Riebendorf, because yes, he did speak at that retreat and gave wonderful presentations, and I know he's done videos of the coastal erosion. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. I just want to go back here, and so I just want to ask your opinion. So it's going to be a little vote for me. So the comments about the environmental grant committee funding recommendations. Can I just have a vote from you? Is that a yes? So we can take it up to give it to our gentleman down there to take to the city manager. Is that a yes or a no for you?
I have a question before we get to that point. I'm looking at the agendized item. It says review of funding recommendations.
Yes.
Under the procedures, it said the Coastal Advisory Committee will consider and discuss a report from EGC and provide its recommendations. I don't know that we have had time to go through these individual applications, and I certainly have not seen attached with any of these a report on the results from the past. So I don't feel qualified to offer my recommendations for approval or denial of any of these. So I don't know what Zach's recommendation is. Are we at a point where we are supposed to or compelled to make some motion or make some decision on these grants? Or what is our course of action here? I guess that's my question.
I think that it says here that this would be turned over to the city manager to review and decide. That's why I'm asking are each of us having I'd like to know what each of us thinks so we can give the information to.
Yeah, but I think what Rick is saying is we haven't had time to digest. Like we can't read all these applications right now.
No, and I don't think that was the question, because it
So
was.
it would make sense at next.
If you're asking us
Next
for
meeting.
our recommendations and for approval or denial of funding, I have, maybe I missed something, but I have not seen these applications. I'm sure all these 8 organizations or 10 organizations are terrific. I don't know why we would turn any of them down. I'm just wondering what we're being obliged or asked to do at this meeting. Respectfully, I know we have 9 minutes left of this meeting. We probably have some other topics to discuss. Are we asked at this point to provide funding for the next 4 months for these? And should we just blanket offer our agreement that these make sense as a recommendation to the EGC?
This is my suggestion. I think that we're providing what I would call a big picture review.
Yes.
These items have been reviewed probably in detail by staff.
Yes.
We've confirmed that they comply with what the requirements are.
Yes.
It's consistent with prior years.
Great.
I feel based on that, I'm comfortable moving forward. So.
Okay, then I would, in that case, I would also agree with John's assessment that this makes sense to me, and I would agree. And that would be my recommendation personally, and I
Okay.
don't know about the rest of the committee.
John?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do too.
I agree. I don't think we need to take a vote though, right? Because there's not anything.
No, it's really just as the sentiment to take it to the city manager, and he will review these and make a decision himself.
Yep.
But
We will
want-
pass on that sentiment.
Can I ask another question? One of the comments that I got from the city council meeting 2 nights ago was that staff of the city are spending a lot of time supporting each of the various odd commissions. This seems that they have done so, this committee that's comprised of Nick and 2 other people. should we, if we are in fact called by the procedure to review and evaluate, take some of that workload off the city staff and actually do the work of reviewing? Now, this is moot because this committee might be disassembled, but this is an example of if the workload is requested of us, then let us do the workload. Again, it's moot, but that's.
Well, I think in this situation, because they already have their committee set up, that committee makes the decision.
Yes,
Yes.
so I'm still unclear as to our involvement.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's an environmental grant, and it's
Right.
going to several places in our city.
Right. I mean, it's called out pretty specifically here that CAC is supposed to be involved with the decision, so I don't see that we were involved.
Well, I think I went through this myself, but maybe you didn't have time to do that with the agenda or whatever. I'm just saying, this is something that the city has done for at least a dozen years.
Okay.
And I don't know that everybody who saw them saw everything, and it's
Sure.
but we would then send it on to the city manager or the director of the department to make the final decision.
Sure.
I think we're just going through the first steps. We pass it on, it says, yeah, it works for me. What do you think, Doc? Kind of thing.
So just a quick, I do have a hard stop at 6. There's still quorum, right? If I leave,
5.
we need 4, right? Because it's 7.
You're good with 4, yeah, and we'll need a motion to continue if you want to continue past 6.
Okay.
Okay. So, can we move on?
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. So we have, the next one is items from staff, coastal items updates. Well,
I think we just finished that with Nikki's presentation.
I mean, I'll just throw this out there. I put together a brief visual of the upcoming events. I don't know if the Coastal Advisory Committee wants to handle this, but just to have a visual. We'll go forward here.
yeah, I think if you have time to just slip it in.
Yeah, I'll just, because these are events that staff are working on, so I just thought I would throw this out there really quick. April 26, 2025, I'm very proud of my clever tagline, a tale of 2 opportunities to get out there and celebrate our Earth here in St. Clemente. From 9 to 1, we're having Earth Day Festival at Parque Del Mar, which is right above the St. Clemente Pier on the other side of the train tracks, near the pier parking lot. And then also a beach cleanup down at the pier, which is typically on the north side of the pier. If you register in advance, the Fisherman's Restaurant has agreed to give burritos up to 100 registrants who show up. So there's always a little fun incentive from our local sponsor. And then from 9 to 12, so that event technically ends a little bit earlier, although the beach cleanup and the pier festival, that kind of tends to end around noon too some years. 9 to 12 at the Municipal Golf Course near Hole 5, which I know where it is only because people have described it to me. I'm not a golfer. They're doing an Arbor Day tree planting with maintenance and Rotary's involved, garden clubs involved. So that should be an exciting and fun way to get outside as well. So attend one or both, that's my plug. And then if you have any questions, let me know. But here's our flyer for Earth Day. There's a QR code to register for the beach cleanup. I know we had some members from this committee come last year, or maybe that was Coastal Cleanup Day, but yeah, probably.
It's really fun to do, and you don't have to stay the whole day. You can go for an hour if you want, and just enjoy the community and all the people that want to clean up or go. Even on Earth Day, you can help plant plants and give them away, etc. All kinds of things that are open for us to do. We could be role models for this one. Any other questions? Any other things for coastal items?
I had 4 items to report, but I'll cut it down to 1. Just on your dais today, we put up these sheets, and they're also in the back if the public is interested. We were given some outreach by an environmental organization that donates baskets to cities for free. And then if the city organizes where the baskets are placed, the public can use them to collect and dispose of trash. So if you as individuals or collectively have any ideas about these baskets, you can follow up with me or with the person's name on the flyer.
Perfect.
Okay.
And Zach, I thought you had one other item just regarding an update on OCTA.
I do. I was asked last meeting to just describe any changes to the city's work with OCTA in the last 2 months. The OCTA board met on February 10th. I had sent around the agenda for that meeting. It's still available online if you want to watch it. The city report is that we are still collaborating with OCTA. We're coordinating as much as possible. OCTA is studying various places where they may put sand. Right now, the leading, the one they're focusing on the most is along the bluff of Mariposa Point, and they continue to study various alternatives.
And there's nothing in there about their progress towards putting actual sand on the beach.
Well, that would be the point where they're first considering putting the actual sand right now is near Mariposa Point, but they're still considering other places too.
I have one more quick one. I found the County of Orange Health Care and Agency, Nikki, this is a good one. And it has all of the beaches and the mores and lesses. Thank you, man. Anyway, it needs some work on it, but I'm really excited. I went through a whole bunch of boxes in my garage and found them. And I do have a contact at the county who will help me go through this and teach me some of the things that we can put on Legend with.
I'll take a picture of it
Just
later.
thought I'd let you know. What's that?
I'll look at it after the meeting.
Okay, I'll let you do that. Alrighty. Any other items from committee members?
One quick item, I would just like to say that I appreciate being on this committee and all the members, and that when I first got involved, first with Beaches, Parks and Recreation, and then when this committee was formed, this committee, that my motivation was for restoring our beaches. And I think that while this committee may go away, the city has made great strides over that period. So I feel while this committee may not be in existence, we have completely changed city council, city manager, coastal administrator that are now very much engaged in doing the good work necessary to preserve our beaches for future San Clemente generations. And so even though it's bittersweet that we may not be in existence, I think the city is doing all the right things.
I would have to agree. I also want to thank all of you too for all of the effort and the energy that you put into the city and the community, and to all of us who might have a question or things of that nature. You pick up your phone, you answer it, and you give us the information that we need to be better in what we're learning and what we're espousing as well. So thank you very much for sharing your skills with us all together. And even on just something, like if I needed something, for example, from John, I know that he's going to give me a good 10 minutes of something that I can understand it better. It's just like when Ted sat down and gave that wonderful presentation. Weren't you just completely absorbed in what he was saying? It was great. Anyway, thank you so much. And again, those of you who run and get these things for us, Zach and Nikki, we really appreciate that, and Miley as well up here in front. Thank you so much.
I have one comment.
Yes, please.
You're talking about outreach events. I've been invited to, and I think several of us have, and have accepted an invitation to a Resilient Shores reception.
Yes.
Okay, just so everyone knows about that.
And that's on the 10th.
Okay.
But that should be good. It's a mix between UCI and the city of San
Yeah, it
Clemente.
has to do with what they're working with us on, right? So, my second question was with regards to the evolution of this committee. Will be rolled into, as I understand, part of Beaches, Parks and Recreation. At least that's a tentative plan. Am I understanding that correctly? Are we then in a position, or do we have the responsibility for nominating two of our members? Or will this be, and over what time frame? Because I think my tenure ends in June or July. And during what timeframe, will those two members need to be moved to beaches, parks, and recreation? Has that been established yet, or?
I don't believe it has, I think it's to be determined.
Okay.
It's to be determined, but usually Laura was saying on Tuesday that she needs the names in of the interviewers in April, May. So, and then it's usually a couple of weeks after that, and people come in, and usually the people who are invited to sit on a committee or a commission, they are selected either early June, and because I do believe that the things start at July, right? The new term starts in July.
Mine may know better than me, but you're asking about other committees when new members are seated?
Yeah, all of the commissions and committees will be interviewing. So they will be interviewing. So if you want your position, you have to interview for it.
Even if someone is on this committee has another year to go in their tenure? they'll-
Well, no, that they weren't sure for. They were going to bring it back as to their
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay.
And that'll probably be,
I'm just curious, trying to get
Well, yeah.
clarification on it, so.
yeah.
I don't think anybody knows.
Okay, nobody knows. And just FYI, I'm out because I'm gonna be gone for 6 months, latter half of the year, so take me off the, if anybody's interested in making recommendations from our committee. So,
But otherwise, it's not us who would be choosing the people that would come from this
It'd be-
committee.
oh.
It's the city council.
Oh, okay, fine. Good.
If you're interested in the opportunity to be considered, I would reach out to city leadership now or to the people Susan mentioned. I can send an email update to this email list when the city council makes a final determination.
There are perhaps some of us who would be more interested in joining that organization than others, so I
Yes.
think that would be smart to do so.
Thank you for bringing that up.
So are we going to receive an email with clarifying the process and an application, or is this something that's just going to show up on the San Clemente website, or?
I will personally commit to sending you an email when the city council makes a decision. I don't know when they'll make that or what that will be, or even item 8, we're asking you to adjourn to the next regular meeting on Thursday, May 15th. So there may be another coastal advisory committee meeting. We don't know.
Well, I was told May, but you never know. That could change.
I make a motion, we adjourn until May 18th.
Oh, could you read it exactly, please? Sorry.
Did you say something to me?
I make a motion that we adjourn to our regular meeting of the Coastal Advisory Committee on Thursday, May 15th, 2025 at 4 p.m. at City Council Chambers located at 910 Calle Negocio, San Clemente, 92673.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure.
Sorry I was late, you guys.